You may never have heard of Ørsted, Enel, Next Era, or First Solar, but they've emerged as hot companies this year as investment in renewable energy has boomed. Shares of the Danish company Ørsted, the world's biggest offshore wind developer, have risen around 80% in 2020. And green energy companies have outperformed their oil and gas counterparts.
Stock market is one indicator of an industry, but it shows that people expect that renewable demand will increase in the coming years, which we see, by the way, all around the world.
Globally, clean energy investment is expected to account for half of total investment in the entire energy sector in 2020. After years of relatively unpredictable growth, renewables are getting more investment than ever, and it has to do with a pandemic, an unprecedented political push to reduce carbon emissions, and the falling cost of green energy. The coronavirus crisis has shifted investment away from fossil fuels. Oil prices saw a historic drop in the spring when global lockdowns sapped demand for oil and gas as people stopped driving and flying.
We looked at multiple indicators that show that renewables are resilient to this crisis. The whole energy sector declined by 40% in terms of the equity shares. This includes oil and gas companies, this includes major utilities. At the same time, we see that wind and solar companies, their share doubled or more than doubled on an average basis.
And in the wake of the industry-wide slump, big oil firms like BP and Total have been making more commitments to green energy. Many analysts, including Jaime Bahar at the International Energy Agency, agree that while demand for oil may see a rebound in 2021, it's expected to wane in the coming years. Meanwhile, demand for renewable energy is forecast to grow with wider adoption of electric vehicles, and as countries around the world are investing big to cut carbon emissions. And the election of Joe Biden gives the industry a boost.
When I think about climate change, the word I think of is jobs.
During his campaign, Biden outlined a $2 trillion plan to fight climate change and put the US on a path to a 100% clean energy economy by 2050. All of this on top of his pledge to rejoin the Paris Climate Accord.
So the US rejoining would have a significant impact on clean energy investing and green investing in general, because it would likely spur government regulation all around the world and likely private investment to build out these projects and fulfill these Paris Agreement promises. Whether this lasts in the eyes of investors will largely come down to the extent to which Joe Biden can deliver on these promises.
We can put millions of Americans to work modernizing water, transportation, and energy infrastructure to withstand the impacts of extreme weather. When we think about renewable energy, we see American manufacturers, American workers racing to lead the global market.
Just before Biden was elected, Nex Energy, the US's largest renewable energy company, briefly topped the market valuation of ExxonMobil, a significant moment for renewables producers. Other global powers have also recently doubled down on clean energy, with China, the world's biggest polluter, even pledging to go carbon neutral by 2060. It's the biggest climate commitment made by any nation.
中国将推动能源清洁、低碳安全、高效利用。
The EU has tied coronavirus stimulus money to green energy plans and pledged around a third of its €1.8 trillion recovery fund to climate initiatives, while investing specifically in wind, solar, and batteries.
In Europe, we have set our objective to become the first carbon-neutral continent by 2050.
Government commitments like these have boosted shares of European utility companies like Enel and Iberdrola, two global builders of green energy projects.
So when you include these big economies together, you start to see a force behind the clean energy transitions. These are maybe long-term targets, but it gives a signal to investors that we will get there. The government signal here is very, very important to give investors a possibility of a future picture of the world.
As investment grows and technology advances, the price of clean energy is dropping. Since 2010, the cost of solar power is down 82%. An estimated 90% of new electricity generated in 2020 comes from renewables, which are projected to be the world's main energy source by 2050.
We see this general trend that In most countries in the world, solar and wind can offer cheaper prices than fossil fuel alternatives for new projects. The most difficult thing is to raise the investment to put the money in the first place, which is very high compared to other technologies, but then operate that plant, the cost is very low because wind is for free, solar is for free.